this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
Hey everyone, I'm Rebecca.
I'm Max.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation, the YouTube show where we review adaptations from one form to another. This week, we continue on our journey into The Expanse with Season 2. But first, Rebecca, how have you been?
I've been gone. Yeah, no, I'm okay. Definitely, missed being here. It's been quite a while. And but I'm glad to be back. And, I'll be excited to be here for a few episodes of The Expanse because I love The Expanse. So happy about that.
You. Max, what can you tell us about this episode?
Well, obviously, this episode is episode 3, Static. Primarily, Holden and Miller butt heads in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed by Jeff Wolno. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that name right. He is known for a lot of shows. Riverdale, Runaways, Cloak and Dagger, Vikings, Heroes Reborn, Saving Hope, Bones, Sarah Connor Chronicles, Battlestar Galactica, Dead Like Me, Dark Angel, Sliders, and Silk Stockings.
Dude.
Wow.
Dude's busy.
He's got a list.
A lot of Fox shows, if you noticed.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And some sci-fi shows on there, I noticed, too.
Yeah.
It was written by Mark Fergus, who is known for Children of Men, Iron Man, and Cowboys and Aliens.
Sweet.
And you guys think of this one?
Oh, I was going to say, given his penchant for drama, from the director at least, it makes sense why he did this episode.
Yeah.
What'd you cats think of this episode?
Good. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's like an episode that I don't like. So I'm into it.
Not nearly as exciting as the previous episode. It's a lot slower, but
yeah, I mean, they kind of have to like bridge this gap between like two actiony, portions of the story, right? Because you have, they're sort of building up to, Arrows round 2. So they have to kind of bridge that gap to get us there. So this is kind of that episode. But we know what's interesting is like, in listening to the chapters again, like it's really only like 3 chapters of the book, although they've added in a bunch of other stuff. But like in terms of the content from Leviathan Wakes, it's like 3 chapters.
It did pull a lot from The Vital Abyss, which is the novella told from the POV of Cortazar.
Oh, okay. I actually haven't read that.
If you had read that.
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, quite a bit of material. No scenes or a specific dialogue, but background about him. His background is all taken from that, and the whole thing with what they did to them in the head. Which is a real theory that they can affect people's brain just with magnets. It has maybe not to the extent of that.
Yeah,
but there is ways that we can affect the human brain with just magnets, and it's kind of creepy at times. Just the idea of what they could do with that.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Hopefully, we'll never see this happening.
I hope not. It's so disturbing, but yeah. So, all right. So let's get into what some of the changes from the source material that we liked or didn't like. I mean, I think. Does anybody want to kick off? Anybody have something they're dying to jump into?
Well, the main thing I just mentioned is that they kind of like in the first season, they really amplified the drama in this whole sequence. I want to say, what's his name?
Fred.
Did here, Johnson.
Yeah.
I feel like they gave him a little bit more drama towards Miller. That wasn't really in the book.
Totally thought that too, because in the book he's kind of like, I mean, he may not have loved that Miller shot Dresden, but he was like kind of, he maintained cool about it. And here he was giving you these eyes that you're like, you don't want to piss off Fred Johnson.
Right.
Like you look at his face and you're like, oh, no, I do not want to piss off that guy.
I felt like in the book, Johnson was more happy that Miller did it because he didn't have to do it to himself.
Yeah, I mean,
because he wanted to
go along with that. Like they gave Fred this line where he's sort of accepting. I mean, this was the previous episode actually, but like this sort of building off of that, but where he almost is starting to like accept what Dresden is saying, like basically like, yeah, but you have to give us like everybody's names right before like Miller shoots him. So it sort of added a little bit more reason for Miller to shoot him, but it also changed Fred a little bit. Like maybe it gave him a little bit more reason to be mad because he was specifically like, no, I'm going to make a deal with this guy and I'm going to find out everyone's names and all that kind of stuff. So that was different.
Even last week, in last week's episode, when Miller does the actual deed, like when he walks up and caps him in the chest twice, Fred like that to the gunshots, where it's specifically mentioned in the book, Fred never flinched.
He doesn't react. Yeah.
He doesn't react to it. Fred hires Miller by the end of the chapters that are equivalent to this episode, hires him back. I mean, it doesn't give him a rank, but he and flat out tells him, I'll throw you to the wolves the moment we're at the negotiating table, but he actually hires him.
Right. He's still willing to work with him because he basically does agree with Miller that Miller was right to shoot him. I think he more or less agrees that it had to be done in the book. And here it seems like he may have different reasons from Holden to be mad about it, but he's definitely mad about it.
Yeah.
So that is quite a change. And it doesn't, I mean, but they sort of are cutting out that whole subplot too of like Miller sort of feeling like he needs to like reinvent himself and like find a job. I think things are just moving faster. So it's just like, we're not going to deal with that. Miller's not worried about finding a job. He's just on to the next phase.
I kind of feel like some of the stuff they did with his character Miller in this is to give him a little bit more to do because he's not going to be around for like seasons 4 or 5.
Yeah. I mean, right. Making him a focus, which, I mean, to be fair, like, he may not have had like a ton to do, but he was half of the chapters in Leviathan Wake. So definitely an important character while he is around.
Yep.
Was it in these chapters or was it when I listened past these chapters at one point today, not catching myself, that they introduced Sam?
No, Sam was introduced, I believe. Okay. Yeah.
That's another change because we never get Sam on the show.
You have Drummer basically taking over that. There's a scene in the books where like Sam is talking about fixing up the Roci and like Drummer's basically doing that. And then there's also mention of like Sam and Naomi being friends and like, hanging out and stuff. And instead we have Naomi hanging out with Drummer. So
Drummer is really then in a way 3 characters. It's
God,
Sam,
at least. She's at least 3 characters.
Kamina, Drummer, and Michio Pa, who we never, sadly, ever get.
There is technically someone named Michio Pa in the show, but it's a different character.
Named Michio. She doesn't have the last name Pa.
Okay. So maybe it's, I mean, again, different character anyway, because Drummer definitely absorbed Michio Pa from the book.
Very much so.
And Sam and her, her own, name.
I didn't realize the Sam thing until tonight, until this episode. So
I don't remember Sam from the book.
I mean, she's a minor character. Like she's in a little bit of I don't know. Is she in?
She's in book 3.
Yes. She is in book 3. I remember her in book 3 because like she's definitely involved in
a major part.
A more significant
part.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's still a pretty minor character. But yeah, Drummer takes over at least 3 characters from the books. I'd say more because I think she takes over parts of Bull as well. Yeah, but anyway. But overall, I think that it's a good choice to condense characters like that. And I mean, you can tell they did that in large part because they had Kara G, who is amazing.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you've ever like listened to, well, I don't know if either of you guys have, I have listened to a podcast with one of the writers and Amos's actor. They do a podcast and they definitely talk about like how like Kara G wasn't necessarily originally supposed to have like that big of a role, but she was just so good that they just kept like giving her more to do and writing more for her character. And you know, hey, they're not wrong, in my opinion. Good choice.
I mean, think about like this episode alone. We were going back and forth between Holden, Miller. I'm stuck at names today. Basically the whole crew.
Yeah.
And Avasarala and Fred Johnson. It's all over the place.
Yeah, and we have Bobby too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're adding in a bunch of stuff. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention in terms, because you mentioned like the crew of the Roci, I think they gave a little bit more to Alex. Like there's a little bit for him here in this episode that's just not in the book at all. Really,
I'm not even sure he has any lines in this part of the book in these 3 chapters.
Maybe not. I mean, I feel like Alex in general as a character is often very much in the background. Like he's sometimes just like not even there when the action's happening. He's like off back at the Roci and like everybody else is doing stuff. And so they gave him this like obsession with like reviewing like the tapes or whatever and like trying to like get it right so that next time he could save more people. And that, and you know, him talking about how his family on Mars like thinks he's dead, like he hasn't reached out since the Donager and they think he died on the Donager. And so that bit of his personal life that doesn't come into the story until much later, you know, gets introduced here. And I mean, I think it's smart because I don't think you can have like a main crew member like that around and not really give him any sort of development until much later on. So it made sense to
he usually ends up on the sidelines.
Yeah, he's very much sidelined.
And
you know, that
Alex
whole
is one of my favorite.
That whole
Alex
segment,
like
thinking he never passed Starfleet's Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah, it is like that. Yeah, it's very much like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
But you know, in one way, it's smart what he's doing. You know, practice makes perfect. But and you know, that's the whole idea of, you know, in sports, you know, they go and they watch the after game. You know, they go after the game and they watch the footage of what they just did, and their coach, you did this wrong, and you know, this was great. You know, that's the same thing here, but he ends up going obsessive.
There's a level of like anxiety here that is not helpful. So yeah.
And it's all part of Alex's nature of, you know, he's a mother hen, and it's a phrase that I hadn't heard for a while until I heard somebody refer to one of the characters in the Dragonlance series as the mother hen. And like, yeah, that's that character, and here that's Alex, because he's the one always trying to look out. You know, not only mothers everybody too, but Alex does a lot of it. Alex does it throughout the books and the show. You go and you'll watch, you'll find tons of moments where he's being the parental, you know, trying to take care like that,
caretaker type,
and he feels so responsible and guilty over the loss of that other drop pod, you know, boarding pod. He's just not in a healthy place right now, mentally.
But I think that was a good addition, because like that whole thing is just not in the book. They just added that in. Totally.
No, I could be mistaken. The Amos scene didn't actually happen in the book, right?
The one with
the interview with
Cortazar?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. None of that Cortazar stuff.
That doesn't happen. And that's one of, well, spoiler alert, one of my favorite scenes. But so no, and I think I really like it because I think it fits really well. Like you know, watching Amos's face, you know, when they're like learning like what's going on with Cortazar. And I mean, I'm reading into it, but I see him, and when he's asking like, can it be reversed? Can it be fixed? Like he's asking someone about himself, because I think he feels like, hey, I might have been born like that a little bit.
It's funny too that he's having this whole discussion with the guy, and you kind of equate Amos having like a low EQ.
Yeah.
But yet he exhibits a very good emotional understanding of how this guy operates.
Yeah.
That someone like Holden, who may have a higher EQ, actually doesn't understand.
Yeah.
That might just be his, background, but
absolutely. Yeah.
He never gives credit to himself of how smart he is in a multitude of ways.
He's a rocket scientist.
Yes. That line in the book, right? Of like, you're literally a rocket scientist.
But literally, my first notes were, is his condition reversible? I'm afraid not. And then Holden, how do you reach a guy like that? And I'm just like, ouch, Holden.
Yeah.
You're talking about Amos.
But Holden doesn't think of Amos like that. Like, he doesn't,
last season he did.
maybe that's true. But and maybe that's changed because he's gotten to know him better,
Yeah.
But I think and it's not as much in the episode as it is in the book, but there's lines in the books where, Holden he's talking to Miller. There's a scene in these chapters in the books between Miller and Holden that's not in the episode. And like sort of Holden's making this distinction between Amos and Miller and saying about Amos that he sees like I forget exact phrasing, but like the scars on his own soul, and he wants to fix it. He wants to be better. And so the fact that Amos cares means that he's not a bad person in Holden's view.
Right.
But he looks at Miller and thinks, Miller is just justifying it. He continues to make the same choices again and again. So I do kind of miss having a scene between Miller and Holden in this episode, more than just him yelling at him at the beginning, right? So, something a little bit more nuanced after he's cooled down a little bit would have been nice.
Like we got in the book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And not
but anyway, I don't think that, I hope even in the show, I think at this point that Holden doesn't think of Amos as a psychopath. Like he I don't know, and as Amos himself will say, like he knows there's something not right about his own morality, but because of that, he specifically lets himself be led by people like Naomi and Holden because he knows that they're going to be right. So he's not going to make these kinds of decisions for himself, but Holden says something, Naomi says something, and that's it for him. So,
I also think that in the books here, world building wise, they were talking about I want to say metahumans or some other version of human in regard to the
post-human, I think was the term in the book. Yeah.
And they use that specifically in regard to the electromagnetic part of the head.
Yeah.
And we didn't really get that world building sense in the show, but they swapped it with the world building behind the proto-molecule.
Mm-hmm.
They explain more about that, instead of post-human, which I'm not sure if that becomes more pertinent to the series later on in the books. I don't know.
Well, not in that sense, but post-human definitely becomes part of the books at one point.
Yeah. In this part of the books, it's more of like Miller reflecting on himself, like, that there's something not quite human about him anymore, so it's sort of more his own self-reflection. And that's one other thing that I will say as far as changes go that I think was maybe a little bit, I missed that scene between Miller and Holden. And I think I also miss in this sequence, Miller, there's a bit of it, but it's much, I think it's stronger in the book that Miller has this cost that he's paying. Basically, the choices that he makes are costing him any real human connection. And that this is a source of pain for him. Like he's going to do it anyway. He doesn't regret his choices. He would do them again. But that internal pain that he does feel at not having those human connections, like there's some thoughts that he has to himself about like, that he had for a very brief moment, like a sense of belonging on the Roci, and then it's gone. And then it's worse that he had that for a moment before it's gone. But that's not really expressed in the episode, other than kind of him drinking himself, getting very drunk after that conversation with Amos. That's kind of all that's really there, I think.
Having watched all the episodes of the show, I don't really think they delved much into the post-human side of the series. So I don't know how that relates to the books. Like, I don't know if they go more into post-human stuff, whether that's like with electromagnetic stuff, whether it's cyborg implants. I don't know.
There's
like in the series, they don't really go in the TV show. Like, there's a couple things in proto-molecule, and then it just kind of goes off to the side, and other stuff happens.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much more in the books, but in a way there is. But a lot of it's proto-molecule created.
Spoiler for later this season, we do see what would technically be a post-human in the upcoming episode where Gunny and her squaddies have an encounter on Ganymede.
Yeah.
The same person that they had to get out of the airlock, out of the, later on in the season.
But again, it's a lot of that is proto-molecule related. Like aside from the proto-molecule stuff, is there much exploration of it? And no, I don't think there's much.
I think there might have been something later in the series, but I think they talked about the eyeball thing in one of them. Was it first
just
season?
Cybernetics.
Yeah, there are some, but yeah.
Kenzo with his cybernetic eye.
Yeah.
And then on the show, there's another character who ends up having a cybernetic eye or eyes. I'm not sure. But it, for their perfectly legit day job.
Yes.
People don't like them for their day job, but
from the series, it didn't really seem they delved too much into that concept nearly as much as the proto-molecule.
Yeah, it's more on that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on changes from source material?
No.
I mean, we didn't really talk much about like the additions of Bobby or Avasarala. I feel like the Bobby stuff is mostly just,
Drama.
Well, no, I think it's establishing her character because she's an important character in book 2, but the way they're structuring this season, if they introduced her in the season only when they got to like book 2 material, it would be late. And I think they have to like give her that background and just kind of explain. It helps flesh out the Earth-Mars conflict, as well.
The Bobby scenes also play into the themes, which I'll get to later. Not so much with her, but with I'll get to that.
Okay. And then like the Avasarala stuff is also fairly, additional. Like it's not really drawn directly from the book. But it's sort of like an early exploration of the conflict between her and Aaron Wright, like basically her realizing that he's the threat. He's the one not to be trusted, so that does happen in book 2, and then just sort of shifting it a little bit early and changing like how it plays out, with this stuff. So
it's giving it a better build up so we can see how she takes down the people she takes down.
Yeah. All right. So all right. So are we moving on to our next topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So I think, this is sort of where we do our little catch-all here, right? Like we want to talk about scenery, costumes, props, any sort of visual type, aspects of the adaptation. Anything anyone wanted to comment on?
I dug the music, even with the horrible noises coming from Eros. I thought it actually, as somebody who spent a lot of time listening to electronic music, at friends' houses and at places, I liked it. I liked what I was hearing. And it uses that creepy ass noise sounds that we get at the credits of last week's episode, or was it 2 weeks ago's episode? It was one of the last 2 episodes, the credits. I think it was last week's episode. If you go back and you watch the credits, it's just the sounds of Eros. And by itself, it's creepy. but even creepier when you know what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because that's something that's described very like in detail in the books, but then you have to actually create it in sound to hear it. So I mean, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And when you do that, though, you're torn between, do we make it just as horrific as it's described in the book? In which case, our audience might not stick through hearing it, and they might change the channel. Or do we tone it back and let so people can comfortably listen to it? It's like a couple months back when Star Wars Andor was airing. There was an episode of characters being tortured, and they're told, you're going to be hearing these horrible sounds of these people dying, and it's just the worst possible imaginable sounds. And thankfully, they did not let us hear the sounds. We'd see it put over the person's head, and then that person starts screaming at the sounds they're hearing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have wanted to hear that audio.
No, sometimes imagination is best. Yeah.
Yes. So I like that they kept it toned back.
Yeah, that's true. It's not. Yeah, it could have been a lot more horrible to actually listen to. Yeah, that's true. But
the CG has always looked great.
There'll be more. The CG is what? Sorry.
Always looks great.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to comment on I'm sure we've talked about this before, but Tycho Station, the Nauvoo. I think I like the designs, for both, and happy with it.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I was very impressed with I want to say the simulation of what the Tycho Station is supposed to be. Or that ship they're building. Sorry, the Nauvoo.
Oh, the Nauvoo, when it's when it's they're showing what it would look like as farmland. Yeah. I mean, you could say the same thing sort of like when it was a previous episode where Bobby's looking at the simulation of what Mars might look like or whatever. But I always feel like they're trying to hopefully make a distinction in show between what is real and what they're simulating, right? And that hi there. You got a change in your background here. What's going on here?
Do you recognize what these are?
Oh. No, that's so funny. I haven't seen these before.
Mars with water.
Yeah, cool.
I'll go back to my blue fireflies.
But so I mean, I'm being generous, but I think that maybe that's sort of deliberate, right? That they're trying to make the in-world simulation look not quite as good as real, whatever's real, but
well, I was playing around with my art program, trying to working with displays, different ways of doing displays, and I took an image of one of the handheld terminals from this show with one person on there, and I managed to get airbrush out the person that was there. And I plopped in an image of Avasarala. And to get it to match up, I had to lower the opacity a lot. But I also had to add a blue filter to it. Add this blue tint to everything.
They use that a lot.
It happens a lot with holographic images. And I don't know exactly why. I don't know if it has much to do with the fact that almost every digital screen that puts out an image for you puts out blue light. And how much that plays into it, but
and I also think just with the show too, they use that blue color palette a lot. I mean, as with the fireflies, but even when it's not that, I noticed that there was some shot of Alex in this episode where I was noticing he was very blue, and I mean, he's on the Roci. I just think it's a color palette that they're using as part of the show. So.
Another example is you watch Star Wars. Even the newer Star Wars, where they have all the technology in the world to make things look as real, every time somebody's in hologram, the hologram's always got, it's got distortion lines, and it's an off color and everything. It's common to make in-world high tech look not nearly as good as it could be made.
Right. They're purposely making it not look as good as they're capable of making it, just to make
it get more believable,
I suppose. Or just to help you visually make a distinction, right, between what is real in the world on screen and what is simulated or whatever.
There's that too.
You also just reminded me of that scene between, not between because they're separate, but when Avasarala sends a message to Fred Johnson, which I forgot about that as like a change. But anyway.
Yeah. It seems like it fully fits in with everything she would do.
Oh yeah.
Especially at this point in time,
How was her costume this episode?
All of this of it. Yeah, I think that's all we saw.
She had a couple different ones, I think. But
I remember her.
Thought we had a full body scene with her.
I don't know. But as always, definitely the best costumes. Right. We're going to talk about costumes. Avasarala always has the best. We don't even need to mention it. It's just
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think I like that they're like, they're really emphasizing that, like, she's committing treason by talking to Fred Johnson like that. But just that, that Avasarala is someone who would do that to prevent millions of people from dying. And, like comes across as sort of like this hard, ruthless person. But underneath that is the person who cares deeply about humanity. And so I think that that's important. And it kind of illustrates an aspect of the book where she talks about how her husband, Arjun, calls it the mask, the persona that she has, public facing persona, and how everyone thinks of her. And her, like her everything about it is crafted, right? Her decision to swear constantly. She does everything she does so that she'll be perceived in a certain way. But underneath that, there is someone who does care deeply. And that's, why she would talk to Fred Johnson. Because
she swears constantly?
Yeah.
I know.
You never notice that little potty mouth?
About. No. Not at all.
Not at all. She's so genteel.
Perfect manners.
Yeah.
She's just a little old grandma.
So sweet.
I mean, I was thinking she's way too old to be cast as Elaine.
True. True. Yeah.
It's just a little too old.
A little too old. So anything else on that category? There's also, we could, if there's anything on the dialogue, also how the dialogue was adapted.
I mean, there's that sports game they were playing.
That's not the same as in the, well, maybe. But I don't think it's supposed to be the same as in the book.
As far as CGI and all that stuff,
the
sports game is in there. Though I do wish there was a little more of gravity stuff going on with that.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah,
or a little gravity spin or something.
Yeah, that
you'd
would be
getting
fun.
some weird movements with that ball as it flies through the air.
True.
They paid attention to it enough in season 1 that they showed somebody pouring a drink, and they do it another time during the series too. I think twice in this show, you see somebody pour a drink in it. The drink goes.
There's a little curve or whatever. Yeah.
That it would have from the Coriolis effect.
Yeah, but in general, it is hard
the game's described as being a cross between, what was it, darts and soccer? I think they said it was it was two like completely different things.
That's weird.
One a ball sport and the other darts, and I'm like,
yeah, you hit a target with a ball.
Yeah. Okay. They called it go-go or go-go or something like that.
Yeah.
In the book. I didn't never seen it in print because I only listened to the audio, so couldn't tell you how it's spelled.
And for dialogue, I was just gonna make note of there's a scene between Miller and Amos that is adapted pretty closely from the books. Like dialogue is very, very similar to that same scene that exists in the chapters. So
the one when he brings in the bag.
Yeah, and they're drinking, and Amos is telling him why Holden doesn't want him around, how he and Miller are similar, so there's a lot of lines that are taken pretty much directly from that scene in the book.
Yeah. There's some similar lines, or almost even straight out of the book lines, in the stuff between Diogo and Miller as well.
Yeah,
a number of those are straight out of the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they do that a lot.
I remember there's a line that Miller says in the episode about telling, in this case, Fred, that he killed Dresden because it's like, I didn't kill him because he was crazy. I killed him because he was making sense. And there's definitely this similar
very
type
similar line.
I don't think it's exactly the same, but it's similar in the book.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned that last week, I think, when I was talking with Jim, something about that, because I think I had listened ahead of where I wanted to in the book. And so I had that stuck in my head when Jim and I talked last week.
Yeah.
But this show does like to pull straight from the book when, maybe not as much as the Sandman did. The Sandman did that a lot.
Yeah.
But this book does do it quite a bit.
Yep. All right. Anybody want to share most memorable scene of the episode for you?
For me, probably has to be Kamina and the whatever room, that the operations room that was, with Alex and Naomi going over the damage. Not just the funny part there is how it started out, because she's just having a blast. Like, wow, this is so fun. Look what happened to your guys' ship. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And then Alex is all morose about it, and she turns all serious and sympathetic with him. Just that entire scene, beginning to end, I really enjoyed that scene.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good scene. It hit the funny beats, and then it hit the absolute serious tones at the same, as well. So, and then finally with the line about Alex, they think I'm dead, talking about his family. So that was the scene that I most remembered. And I'd probably say my personal favorite. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best scene. I'll let you guys go before I say what that would be.
Okay.
So, aside from anything with Amos, I'll go with the scenes that with Miller in like the bunk room with that one kid. And first he's being tortured with the music.
Yeah.
And then he shaves his head. I like that part.
Yeah. Yeah, that was nice. I like the shaving too, because it's like he's sort of gradually leaning into the belter. So I feel like that is part of that, right? Like, we don't have the hat, shaving his hair like that. I feel like and some of his dialogue in the episode too kind of supports that in this episode, he's kind of like leaning into his belter. A bit.
Stop being an earth poser.
Yeah, but it's, I think in season 1, you kind of get the sense that he's a belter who's sort of like acts a little bit like an earther, and the hat somewhat exemplifies that. And, I think he's feeling more belter these days.
I don't think in season 1, you could even say Miller liked belters.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he never, hardly ever called them belters. I think we heard skinnies come out of his mouth more time than belter. And
I thought about that, but that could be. Yeah.
Was it this episode or last that kid kept referring to me like a Q-Star pig or something?
Star Helix.
Yeah, Star Helix.
And it's Pampa.
Yeah.
P-A-M-P-A. Pampa.
Probably means
that's what he calls him most of the time.
Grandfather.
Yeah.
I looked it up. Old man, grandfather, uncle.
That's what I thought. Yeah, like old man. Yeah.
But I remember him talking about being Star Helix and being a lapdog for them, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was like grating on him because of what happened with Dresden and what Dresden did as part of like all that.
Yeah, and then you see like they're more accepting of him because he killed Dresden, right? So.
Yep.
You killed the number 1 dick in the solar system.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't
also a line in the book.
Wasn't Star Helix involved with Dresden at some level, or is it a different organization?
I think Star Helix was. No, not as far as I recall. No.
What was the
You're thinking Protogen.
Is that the company is that the company his friend went to?
Right. His friend
that's where
went to go work for Protogen. Yeah. Havelock.
And then it was Havelock who got the location of Thoth Base in the book.
Yeah.
Say, in this TV show, do we have Protogen, or was it just Star Helix?
They did mention
Protogen.
Yeah, we had mentioned it. Yeah.
I couldn't remember if they did or
Protogen
not.
was even mentioned and was mentioned in season 1, even their security when dealing with Semi. He talked about
On Arrows, yeah.
on Arrows.
I couldn't recall if they called them
Protogen was
Protogen
there.
or Star Helix or what they called the basically the criminals that they hired out to
Yeah.
security.
No, they
Yeah,
did.
those-
They've been using the
that
name.
was that was the one that was an initials, a 3-letter initialization of meat for the machine was what it was supposedly translated for, but I don't think that's what it actually translated as. I'm not sure. But that was the fake security company that was in that had the contract on Arrows.
Yeah.
That Semi ended up having to stay, work with the state on.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But being
Protogen did
corporate
have their own
shill,
security
Earth shill,
company.
kind of felt like that's where he was going away from that and going into his belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then he's not a cop anymore. A guy who used to be a cop. So yeah. Anyway, all right. So my most memorable scene was Amos and Cortazar, because I think I just think that was a great addition, to help kind of flesh out, Cortazar as a character and to build on Amos's character. And it made perfect sense to me, like that Amos would be able to figure out how to get this guy to talk. Like he would have that kind of insight into the way this guy's brain works. And and it's chilling because Amos really plays that up, right? Like he knows how to talk to him like a psychopath, sociopath. Yeah.
Yes, they're different. What the difference between the two is, I'm not sure, but
they are different. But I have a feeling that I think colloquially people mix them up, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm not sure actually which is the correct one in this case, but for like a person lacking in empathy.
I'm pretty sure the word sociopath was used in the book.
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily make it technically correct either. I don't know, but yeah, sociopath, psychopath. Anyway, whatever it is, the person lacking in empathy, clinically lacking in empathy, Amos can play that up, right? He can he explains to Holden, he's likening it to talking to a pedophile, which he has also done. So, it's just a lot of disturbing insight into the way Amos's mind works, but it was a good scene.
Yeah, that just kind of made me think about, I need a Amos Firefly crossover movie, TV show, something.
Sure. Yeah. He would definitely fit in.
I probably should have mentioned this with the CG. But another scene that really, really stands out in my memory is that opening of the missiles on their way to blow Deimos up. Just I love the shooting of it and how they shot that. And then, it just I liked how they, the composition of that sequence, how they filmed it. I liked. So
yeah.
Not so much the blowing up of Deimos, but
no. Not love that. All right. So what are our casting standouts in this episode?
I mean, I'm gonna guess who everybody's favorite's gonna be. Wes Chatham.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay. I was gonna say somebody different, but let's.
I actually have someone different too, but I do agree that this is a great episode for Wes Chatham. So I mean,
I only say that because it was basically all of our favorite scenes.
We did talk a lot about some great Amos scenes, and he did do great. So I mean, definitely a strong choice. I had somebody else that I was going to mention too, but yes, Wes Chatham is correct. What were you going to say, Glenn?
I got two off the top of my head. The first is He Who Shall Not Be Named as Alex.
Okay.
He did a great job. He's an asshole, but the guy was a damn good actor on the show, and I will credit that fact. I'm just not going to give his name.
Because Alex is a sweetheart, as a character. and like knowing that he's played by like a real dick is that sucks.
Hard. It's hard. You know, it
That's
hurts.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, Alex is one of my 4 favorite characters. Like I said it last week. It's Alex, it's Bobby, Monica Stewart, and oh no, I'm blanking on who the other one I said, but Fred Johnson.
Oh, okay.
So it's Fred Johnson.
Alex being the only member of the Roci crew that makes your top 4. Wow.
Yeah. And he's the member of the Roci crew who spent more time on the Roci.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah.
All the time everybody else went off to go do stuff, he had to
sit. He was always there.
Babysit. That's why he started talking to the ship like it was a person.
It is. So, yeah. Who's your other one? Who's your other actor?
Kara G.
Yeah.
You know, everything. And specifically for that scene, you know, at the beginning with her on this episode with, you know, on the ops center talk, you know, her exuberance over at the damage the ship has taken.
So cute. Yeah.
I mean, she's good in the other scenes with, you know, with Naomi too. So
yeah, I think she is.
But Kara G is my number 1 pick for the episode.
I was gonna say Kara G as well, just because it's not necessarily that she had a lot of like dramatic stuff to do in this episode, but the point is that, you know, she's such a strong actress that like she made herself a standout without having a great deal of material written for her. And not by like pulling focus either, not by, you know, doing anything that would make her stand out in a way that she shouldn't, but just by being really good and interacting really well with other actors. And so, you know, since I hadn't really had a chance to mention her prior to now, I just felt like definitely she's a fantastic casting choice.
Yes, she is.
But I would agree that strongest actor in the episode was Wes Chatham. But I would, you know, Kara G is just a standout casting choice.
And she'll be excellent as a Guianan if we can get her.
Put her in anything. I'd like to pretty much just, minus He Who Shall Not Be Named, just take the entire Expanse cast and just move them over to the Wheel of Time. I'd be fine with it. I'd take the whole lot.
or you know, a Firefly remake.
Yeah. Nah. Don't do it. Don't do it. Too much pain.
No, I'd rather put them over to Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
You get some more good actors on there. I can totally see Thomas Jane as an Aiel. Totally see him as an Aiel.
I think we're ready to talk about themes. So, who wants to kick us off? Max.
Well, the 2 that come to mind were tension and manipulation.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of self-explanatory. This episode is all about tension. You know, the headbutting between Holden and Miller and Fred, everything going on at Evosflora and Earth. Manipulation, we have, like I said, Evosflora again. We have Amos and him manipulating that guy to get what he wants to know out of him.
Yeah.
And probably a lot more I'm not even catching off the bat.
Miller was manipulating the Mormon dude to get information on the Nauvoo.
Definitely. What other manipulations could I? None else. No other manipulations that I can think of are popping into mind. So,
I mean, Kara Gee's character was doing a manipulation there. I don't know. Maybe just to get her Naomi drunk. I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I don't know if you're hitting at a romantic thing there.
No.
Just getting her drunk to get her drunk.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that was manipulative. I think that was genuine.
I had the impression from watching the show that they'd been friends for longer, but I'm probably forgetting how much time takes place between now and when certain events in the show take place.
Yeah.
Because we do get like a big time jump between season 2 and season 3, if I remember correctly. So
that could be, yeah. I think there definitely makes sense that there would be a time jump, I believe. But yeah, I think this is supposed to be like they're just becoming friends. I don't think, know, that they are. Whereas it's different in the show, but I think it's again supposed to be sort of, I mean, different in the book, but I think it's supposed to be somewhat analogous to Naomi becoming friends with Sam, which is also how that plays out. So for me, a theme that I think is important, both from the book and in the episode is, I guess broadly speaking, justice, and more specifically, like, when is it okay to just enact justice as Miller does, sort of just exploring that question of, like, is what Miller did right? Is it ever right? And Naomi sort of throws it at Holden a little bit, like, that, because Holden, says it's not right for Miller to just make that decision himself, to just take it upon himself to enact justice. And, so Naomi kind of throws it at him, but it's okay for him, right? Because, I mean, sort of, if it was up to Holden, that wouldn't have happened. Either way, it's sort of, a person making a decision, I guess. But
as Kamina pointed out in this episode, Miller killing Dresden in last week's episode wasn't even the only example of extrajudicial killing. And when Fred threw the Black Sky guy out the airlock,
I mean,
Fred
the thing
did it too.
We should realize is that it's also an aspect of Belter culture that would in and of itself be a reason why it would be more acceptable to Miller than it is to Holden. Because if you do have someone who is a danger, putting like a station at risk, putting a ship at risk, spacing people is not unheard of. Like, it's fairly common, because whatever, they don't have a brig to put people in, or whatever the case may be, they just space people. And I'm not saying that makes that a good choice, but in terms of cultural norm, it is somewhat accepted, and we certainly see plenty of examples of it. Fred did it.
It's talked about in the first book, where in the Belt, if somebody doesn't change the air filters often enough, or they show a very callous lack of concern for the air filters or the water or something like that, they're going to be found floating. They're going to be put on the,
And that's sort of a harsh, worldview, but it comes about in a place where if you run out of water or you run out of air, you're just dead. And not just you, but an entire station full of people, and entire world, world full of people could just be dead because of someone's, careless or reckless actions. And they treat that very harshly. And so the idea that someone being a threat, and that's the way Belters would tend to deal with someone who is a serious threat.
That's why Naomi said to Jim in the show, you wouldn't understand,
right?
When they had that argument in the bedroom.
Yeah, and it was sort of interesting that, again, that sort of maybe played up for a little bit more drama in the episode, but it does somewhat fit with, again, Naomi being a Belter and sort of understanding that aspect of Miller, that in a way that Holden can't.
And also not just that aspect of the harsh justice, but also the aspect of it was 100,000 Belters. Yes. And you, the Earther, don't understand how me and the other Belter felt about all this.
Yeah, that it's a genocide, and and from someone who was thoroughly unrepentant, and would have done everything he could to keep doing it, and may have
was trying to do everything he could do to keep doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this particular instance, I actually think, this is just, my somewhat judgment on what limited information we have, but I think Miller had more reason to shoot Dresden than Fred had to space the other dude. Personally. As far as, the overall consequences. I mean, I think Fred did it to make a point. I think he did it for effect. And that's a weaker reason to do something than Miller's reason, which was this guy is dangerous. He can't be controlled, and he will result in more hundreds of thousands or millions of people dead. He's too dangerous. Which, I mean, so I think the only argument against Miller doing what he did is that he had information that's now gone. That's really the only argument against what he did.
And I have to agree. I'm not normally in favor of death as a punishment.
No,
but when it's mass murder and the person makes no bones about the fact that they did it, that's a crime against humanity. I can't condemn the condemnation of somebody who commits mass murder, who commits a crime against humanity. That's what's going to happen, especially in a frontier society as the Belt. Because that's what it really is as a frontier society. It's like the Old West.
I think it's the question of, can you neutralize Dresden as a threat in any other way? And Miller certainly believed that he could not be neutralized as a threat in any other way. And I think he has a point. Whereas, normally you can neutralize someone as a threat, you can put them in jail and keep them there forever, but would that work in this case? And I don't know.
No, he would have been let out by somebody.
Yeah, would he'd keep talking to people, how do you keep this guy from getting the ear of important people? Because everyone would want to talk to him, right? This isn't a guy that you'd like throw in a hole somewhere and no one would want to talk to him. Everyone would want to talk to him. Every powerful person would want to talk to him, and you couldn't stop him from getting their ear. And that's where I think Miller had a point, because that's where he would be dangerous.
And he can convince people. He was convincing Miller. Mm-hmm. And Miller
didn't want to believe it. He was dead against it, but he was like, oh shit, this person has a point. I'm starting to, believe it. He's got to go, So I actually think Miller was right.
I had this one written down as vengeance versus justice. With all the arguments over Miller, like I said, the whole thing with Kamina pointing out that Fred killed the Black Sky guy, dude. For the attack on Avasarala, and just hope that nobody finds out you're not going to be working with her, because they're going to put a hit out on you.
Yeah.
And for the OPA, I can see them saying that as justice or vengeance or both, because the line is very thin there sometimes.
Yeah. And then certainly there's a fair question to be had of like, did Miller really do it for the right reasons, or did he do it because of Julie? But I actually tend to believe him, in this case.
I definitely believe what he said.
Yeah.
All right. Was that your
That was mine.
Or was it? Yeah. Okay.
So if you want to add anything, because that was the one I wanted to talk about, was the theme of just, justice and whether you can carry it out summarily ever or not.
I had two others. I kind of hit on this one a little bit earlier with Alex going over the battle in Sim. Responsibility coupled with guilty remorse for 25 people's death. Holden, he's always trying to take responsibility for everything onto his own shoulders. That maybe not as much in this episode, but in just pretty much the entire series, that's a theme of Holden's, at least. And then we got Avasarala, who actually is responsible for everything. Mostly within her remit, but she's got the weight of everything on her shoulders. An awful lot. But for me, the big one, I think, was belonging. First, Miller belonged to the Roci crew. Holden told him both in the book and in the show. Holden made it clear that you're part of the crew. Let's make sure you come back. Where are we going to meet up? Don't clear your stuff out. All that. And then all of a sudden, Miller's not belonging to the Roci crew.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, he's now being taken in by the OPA guys. Not just Fred hiring him in the book, but the guys, Diago and the other, I can't think of the other guy's name. He was given a name.
He does have a name and I forget it, but Diogo,
But those two OPA guys took him in. You're one of us now. And all this time on series, he was never a friend of the OPA. And he's got Anderson Dawes trying to con him into joining the OPA. And it's Fred Johnson who essentially gets him to join without trying.
Well, what's so funny is in the book, it's like he goes to like interview for this like crappy job and they're like, nah, you're too experienced. We're not going to hire you. And he's like, but why did you leave your whole job? And he's like, what? And he started talking about Star Helix. And he's like, no. OPA. And he's like, what? You think I worked for the OPA? And then he's like, I did work for the OPA. And people think I worked for the OPA. Well, I guess I'll go work for the OPA. That's how that went.
Yeah. Also, there's Amos, kind of a belonging for Amos when he's identifying both with Miller and later Cortazar, because to both of them he said the same thing. You and I are a lot alike, you know? And, you know, even if he might not have said it to Cortazar, but it was clear when they were talking to the doctor that he was identifying, he felt a sense of kinship or belonging to the situation Cortazar had of not being right in the brain anymore.
Yeah.
And you could
I don't think he said it, but it was implied. Yeah.
Yeah. You could see how that Wes Chatham did do a great job when the doctor says, no, it's not. And just, you could see the disappointment on his face. It didn't help Holden saying, how do you get through to a guy like that? How do you reach a guy like that? Because that's like, oh, Holden, that you're talking about Amos, whether you realize it or not, because he is. At least to Amos, it seemed like Holden was talking about Amos. And then there's what was his name? Private Travis. or Martian Marine Corps, MMC.
Yeah.
Travis being harassed by the other Martian squaddies.
Not Martian enough. Yeah.
It wasn't Martian enough. So he wasn't belonging. And then the end of the episode, they were all hands on it, except for Saeed, just stood there like that, glaring at him.
But he gave him a nod.
A nod. He gave
the
him a
masculine
nod. Okay.
Nod.
Yeah. You would think by 300 years from now, they would be over that sense
toxic
of
masculinity.
Toxic masculinity. You would think. I'm hoping we're over by the end of this century, but good luck. Good luck. But yeah, I think belonging, and whether belonging and not belonging, the two sides of that coin there.
I mean, I definitely see where you're getting at. And I think I wish that aspect of the theme was a little bit stronger, because I think it is very important in the book. Again, for me, it's that the idea that Miller truly doesn't belong anywhere. I mean, even with him getting this acceptance from the OPA guys, he doesn't feel that. He doesn't self-identify enough with that, and it doesn't, sort of give him that that human connection that he does crave, even while he continues to make choices that push it away. And so I just, I wanted a little bit of a stronger sense from Miller that there's pain, with him not having any human connection, and that's the cost of the choices he makes, is no human connection, and that he'd still make those choices, but it hurts,
He's got to be one of the most sad sack cases I've seen in TV or in book in a long time.
Yeah, and it's true, and I mean, I think it's a lot of times it's actually weirdly like hard to feel sorry for him. Like, he's very sad sack, but he makes these choices, right? He does it to himself again and again and again and again.
I manage to feel sorry for him all the time, but
I mean, I think the only times when I really feel sorry for him are when it's clear that he wants that connection. When he wants the connection, and when it's clear that it's something that he does crave, then I do feel sorry for him, because he just can't. He's not capable, or he just keeps making choices that make that impossible. And he could choose differently, but he doesn't. And it's a little bit that it's very much more subtle in the show than it is in the book, but his internal Julie Mao, who occasionally talks to him, and mostly in the show just appears to him, but in the book she's always saying to him, at this point you belong with me. And
even
to
touches
him
him at this point, if I remember in the book.
Yeah, in these chapters, there's a lot of that. You belong with me. She's saying that to him. Mm-hmm. And in his mind, he thinks that means that he should be dead. That's how he interprets that. That those words from her, that he should be dead, and that's where he belongs. And so that is also emblematic of him saying that he doesn't belong with anyone else, right? There is no other person alive who he belongs with. And that's that complete lack of belonging that Miller has, which is sad. Again, when it's clear that he wants it and that it hurts that he doesn't have it, it is sad. It is sad.
I feel sad for him all the time. Reading that first book. Definitely after reading that first book, it was a lot.
Like I said, sometimes I don't, because he makes these choices himself, right? He keeps making the choices that push everybody away.
I still feel bad for him being that kind of person to be dumb enough at times to make the choices, or feel he's got no choice but to make the choices that he makes.
It's broken. There's definitely some things broken in him.
Yeah.
But you can look at someone again like Amos and go, well, there's something broken in Amos too. But he kind of knows that, and he makes choices that work around it and allow him to have people, and Miller can't do it.
No. Did you have anything else, Max?
Nope.
I think that's
Any other themes? All right. Well, thanks for coming on, everybody. Thanks for watching at home. Glad to have you back, Rebecca. We've missed having you here.
I'm looking forward to being back in a couple episodes. Yeah, I'll be back for episode 5.
For episode 5, you and Leia both that week. That's going to be fun. We're going to have guests most of this season, you guys. Thanks for watching. Please come back next week and check out episode 4, I think that will be. If Max has the name. If not, I will put it up there. Boom.
Godspeed is the episode title.
Godspeed. So, thanks for watching, and don't forget to be awesome.